Hey, this is Dr. Kelly Cagle, and for season 3, we're doing things a little differently because we know that a healthy and happy dad and mom starts with a healthy and happy husband and wife. So I decided to bring along my husband, Josh, as co-host so we could share some real life stuff of the ways that we learn how to fight to make our marriage thrive. You are listening to season 3 of the Parenting IQ podcast, Learning to Fight. Okay, I think you're really going to like today's topic because this week we're going to be talking about sex. It took us this long, and I know this is what you've been waiting for. And so within the line of communication, we know that a big area where you need to talk about and not increase, but really make sure that you are touching on and having conversations is about sex, right?
Amen.
If you listen to our episode from season 1, when I did an interview with you, we're talking about our story of how we met. I brought up the fact about love languages. Remember this? And I asked you what your love language was. And you're like, yeah, yours is quality time. And I asked you what yours was. And you were like, I don't know. What's yours?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Mine, I think, is physical touch.
You think?
Yeah, I think so.
So he likes to say that this is every guy's. He likes this. He's over here reaching for me if you're watching us. He likes to say that this is every guy's, and I remind him, no, it's not just every guy. Guys are wired to desire sexual relationships, but not all of them feel really loved primarily that way. And so today we're not necessarily talking about love languages either. We're just talking about how to fight through sex talks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think, we all can get into this mode of, well, what does that look like? Or what does that mean? What am I supposed to say? How do I start this? Maybe you have or haven't been in your marriage going through any of these conversations. Marriage is so colorful.
Mm-hmm.
You've got early marriages. You've got marriages that's been 40 years, 50 years, and thinking about the different times and seasons that you go through as a husband, as a wife, with kids, through different changes of your body, whatever it might be. I mean, sex is something that we constantly need to make sure that we not just do, but we communicate.
You're like, but also do.
Yeah. No,
talk about it, but also do it too.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to help all us guys out, That's just what it needs to be, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important to even ask you. As we were writing these notes, we were like, I think it's important to point out to the audience, like, do you even have these conversations? Because I think that for various reasons, whatever your history, maybe wounds, whatever you've dealt with in your life, maybe it's awkward, maybe it's painful, maybe it's hurtful to talk about these things, but hopefully you are seeking help if it is any of those things, because sex is healthy. It's God designed. He created it. When he created Adam, he said, okay, now he needs a partner because this isn't, he needs a mate. And so he created that husband, woman and man for relationship and for that sexual relationship
and
too.
I think the reason why in this day and age, or maybe forever, really, nothing's new under the sun. But I think that when it comes to sex, it can be so distorted, so misunderstood. The world tries to confuse what sex should look like or be. And we've even had to go through some of these understandings because, yes, as a guy, you hear the term or the coin that we're like a microwave, you are like an oven. We're ready at any given time.
So true.
And and all the time, right? But then as far as a lot of women, they like to kind of get that oven started, need to warm up, and all the type of things that can take place, and it's not on your mind maybe as often.
Yeah. No, even physically, we have friends that understood the body a little better than us, that were kind of professionals in this field, and they clarified this to us, that the women actually, you may know this, you may not know this, that only during ovulation, during your ovulation cycle, which this may be TMI for you guys if you're listening. Okay, you have no idea, but the women listening have they really know what I'm talking about. It's like days between 14, 16 of your cycle is when you're ovulating, and that's the time frame that you can get pregnant, right? And
Mm.
so even in that, God was so creative that he said, hey, this is your window to get pregnant. You're going to get really horny. Sorry here to use that language,
Uh-oh.
but really that's the time that you desire
And
it.
so us guys are like, "What? 2
Yeah.
days?"
Yeah, right. Exactly. And the rest of the time, it takes intentionality. Like you said, it takes getting the oven going and really doing some work, not just hit it and go.
Well, and I think so many times when you're young, you know, you're getting married, you're early in your marriage and stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and life maybe is just about you guys, and that
Hmm.
is an awesome, awesome time to be in. You know, take
Hmm.
advantage of those
Yeah.
things. I always say kids don't come with a receipt, but as life continues and your family grows and times start to get
Distraction.
divided. Yes, your time gets divided up into other things you're committed to that might not just be about you,
Yeah.
right? That's whenever it is very very important to make sure that we're falling back on this communication piece with
Hmm.
sex
Hmm.
because sex is not something that we just want to talk about when we're in the bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really good point that you're bringing up because eh, just like one of the topics that we hit on every single week that we introduce, which is the choosing your battles wisely. One way that you can choose this conversation wisely is the time. When are you going to bring it up?
Right.
Are you going to bring it up whenever you are frustrated because you thought this was going to lead into something and it didn't? So, as a guy, you're upset. So you already lead out of a like an anger, a little like, oh, I'm so mad right now that she won't start this. And I'm over here like being all like playing with her hair, whatever. This is where I want it to go. And then she falls asleep. And then
Hmm.
you're like, oh my gosh. And so I think that
All the headaches that you ladies have that we hear about,
he overgeneralizes all the
all
time.
the things, you know. But there is, I mean, as a guy, you know, basically, ladies, just trying to help you ladies understand that any day of the week that ends in a Y, we're fine, you know, with having sex. I'm just saying that,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
that's just, you know, I think about a story that's so funny that we were in a church one time for Sunday school or something. I don't remember
Uh-huh.
exactly what it was doing. It was informal and stuff. And one of the ladies, we were talking about sex, you
Uh-huh.
know, and one of the ladies stood up and she's like, "What happens if I do all the dishes? I work, I strive to raise our kids." And then I get home and I'm ready to go to bed, and my husband's ready for me to have sex. I'm tired, you know. And she's telling us all this stuff, and this guy's sitting there like, in one of those want to get away
Yep.
moments, you know. And then one of these other ladies said, "Hey, ladies, listen, we got to support our husbands." She hops on the other
Yeah.
side. "We got to support our husbands. You need to be having sex with your husbands 5 days a week." You
Yeah.
remember that?
I do
And the
remember that.
whole
That
church
was the
just starts,
pastor's wife.
yeah, the whole church just starts cracking up. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen this before." And the pastor gets up there and he's got his little handkerchief and he's like patting his head. He's like, "My, my, my, my,
Yep.
my."
Yep. Yep.
He's like, "I don't know. If I had this going 5 days a week, I might not be able to pastor before you today."
And they were older.
They
So I
were.
think it's so fun to like what you mentioned a little earlier is the seasons of life, even in your marriage. So your energy drops because you are now raising kids and you're exhausted and you've got bills to pay, careers to pursue, whatever is going on in your life. And then you also have to tend to this area in your marriage that's so important because you don't want this to be a little area. And I will go ahead and bring up the fact that how easy it is for women after, because I'm right there with everybody, with probably a majority of the women, is it's not hard for us to easily tap into comparison in this area because we've
Mm.
birthed children. Our bodies have changed. We no longer look like, for example, in our case, I was 19 when we got married. My body did not look like this. I was fitter, I was skinnier, I was stretch mark free. But my body did really hard things with really 6 pregnancies. And so, but we have to just not lean into that comparison. That's not, it's a hard thing to do,
Well,
you know?
comparison is something that can it's meant to divide and conquer, and a lot of times it can first divide our thoughts,
Mhm.
and is trying to then conquer our thoughts by making us think on things that aren't good, right?
Mhm.
That aren't maybe good and perfect, like the
Mhm.
word says. Think on those things that are good and
Yeah.
perfect. And I think sometimes when we have comparison, then once we get that in our heads,
Mhm.
we then find ourselves in the dividing of our intentionality of our
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
in that area. So that could be a big deal.
And what I always think about too is if I don't get past that in my own mind, right? Like my body is like this. I can do my best to eat right and exercise and do all the things, take care of my body, but I can only do so much. But at the same time, you are my husband. And so if I take offense to whenever you want to talk about it or the frequency or how often we're doing it or all these other things, if I take offense to it, if I approach this conversation with a defensive mindset, because in my head, I'm either not ovulating, so it's not my time to want it, or I'm in that stinking thinking of comparison that I'm not beautiful, or now it's football season, we got all the cheerleaders, and it's so easy for us to be like, well, must be nice to look like that, but it's you wives, we have that one husband. And so if we allow ourselves to get in our heads in that way, those negative thoughts, then we are not giving in to the whole holistic uh beauty of our marriage.
Well, and obviously with sex, as we talk, a lot of times what we have to discuss when we do have our moments when we're talking about sex is just understanding each other. Okay, that is the purpose of the communication
Mhm.
piece. Is we got to understand where each other's coming from, whether
Mhm.
it's in the distractions, time, trying to identify where we're at. Right.
Mhm.
Let's do a check. Let's come to center. And what you'll find, or what I understand is one, we are all selfish human beings. We have to die to our selfish
Mhm.
desires all the time, our fleshly desires. And so what we've got to understand is how are we coming to each other in the topic of sex, right?
Yeah.
Is it out of selfishness? I want what I want,
Mm.
you want what you want, right? And
Mhm.
and that's not going to align. And so many times when we are needing to go through these topics,
Mhm.
it is because we're needing to do a check, a
Yeah.
heart check,
Mhm.
and sometimes the enemy is in it can be of our mind, the battle's in our mind, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
what you'll find so much is that once you do have these conversations of sex, now it could be as a listener that maybe you haven't ever even entered into a
Right.
conversation of sex. It's just something you did because you felt like it was supposed to in marriage. You hear, oh, marriage, adultery, all the things take on pornography that can happen. Keep restraints from wanting to get in that intimate spot.
Mhm.
But the only way that you're going to be able to take a healthy sex life in our marriage is to be devoted to taking that step of communication,
Mhm.
and so once we do those things, I would always encourage, I mean, for us, to be honest with you guys, we didn't do this in the first
Right.
parts of our marriage. It was something that
Several years.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, to be honest, we didn't start our kind of this intentional dating scene until later on in life.
Mhm.
And what you'll find many times is that how important and how much we want a microphone out to any marriage, young and old, that hey, we need to be devoted to communicating on
Right.
everything
Right.
about our marriage.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that that really taps into the what kind of fighter are you within this realm of sex. If a spouse comes to you, I've said for I think the past 2 weeks that vulnerability is hard for me,
Mm,
and I my initial response is typically to be defensive
yeah.
about anything that needs to be fixed because I'm very task oriented and I like checklists and I like these things. And if sex isn't on my checklist for that day, then it's really kind of not even on my
Whoa,
mind.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
And
whoa.
I need to add it every day.
Yes,
Okay,
just go
got it.
ahead. Just recurrence, a daily recurrence on that calendar.
Oh, y'all
Okay.
pray for me. But so I'm just saying that if you were to bring that up to me, then my initial and I'm talking about really any area, but this also in particular, I'll be defensive.
Mhm.
And I'll come the very first episode we share what kind of fighters we are in particular, that I withdraw, that I want to go away and hide and not talk for a little bit, that you want to solve it right now. So I know that about myself. It's been this self awareness that we've done, that I know my initial response is typically going to be defensive. So I tell myself, hey, don't go there. Don't withdraw right now, because I know that talking about sex isn't supernatural for you, because you actually thought it was really awkward. You're like, this
Yeah.
is awkward. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, but we need to talk about it.
No, I didn't really want to, there for a while. And still even sometimes I can be honest with you that I can get in my head
Yeah.
stinking thinking or whatever, and I still can think, well, should I say something or what? Now what I've learned is, or I say learning and try to
Yeah.
walk out all the time is when to say things
Yeah.
or when to come up with these hey, we should think about this or do this
Mhm.
or whatever. It could be outside of the bedroom at 10 o'clock at night or
Mhm.
10:30 whenever you're trying to go to bed.
Mhm.
Maybe each person has different motives.
Yeah.
Your motives to go to sleep, mine might not make it that way, and so sometimes every time it is not good to say, hey, let's spend this time right now to talk about our sex life.
Mhm.
That is not the
Mhm.
moment. You're tired, you've
Mhm.
got different maybe stances that you're on right then, and all that might do is
Yeah.
either hurt one
Yeah.
or and can inflame that conversation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I will also say that we both are early risers. And so for us, that's a time that is not healthy for us. But there could be others that are, that have different work shifts and things like that. So the 10:30 in particular would be if you have a 8 to 5 job type of thing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I think that for you, what works for you? What are healthy times within your home? Does it even take, maybe you live in a household with a lot of kids that stay up later too, maybe teenagers, and I don't know, maybe it takes you sitting outside and just say, hey, you know what? Can we just talk about something real quick, that you even have to prep in the morning, the other, if you are the withdrawal. And another kind of person is the penalty one, right? That if you bring something up that you really don't like, then you're like, you know what? I'm gonna hold out.
Yeah,
I
I'll show
just
you
got.
to be
I'm
thankful.
gonna make you pay for it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
make you pay for it.
Yeah, yeah, and again, we're just going to be talking about this for quite a while. Obviously, there's going to be certain topics and certain things that we're going to want to delve deeper in.
Hmm.
We want to highlight in this season or in this month about this communication piece where, hey, when you are communicating, let sex be a topic of communication. We talk
Hmm.
about kids,
Yeah.
we talk about work. We talk about all our other family issues and
Hmm.
needs. We talk about money. We talk about whatever it might be. We need to talk about sex.
Hmm.
Let's talk about sex, baby. About that song. And I feel like that we as a culture have been we suppress it sometimes. We don't really know how to address this.
Hmm.
And again, we first start with humility. Hey,
Hmm.
there might be some areas where I am, needing to grow or needing to change. And then same for you. And so I think when we do invite this conversation of sex, then we need to make sure we're laying our guard down.
Yeah. And I think also being transparent.
Hmm.
Transparency is so important whenever you're getting into these topics that are kind of harder, not the general, oh, the kids, the job, whatever, but whenever conversations that are more intentional about, hey, what's going on in your heart? This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. I would love to explore this, to try this out. What about this? Some girlfriend told me about this or whatever. This new, I don't know. But just thinking of that, tapping into the clear minded, the hey, I'm gonna not only go talk about this, but also say, this is maybe tell the other, this is uncomfortable for me to talk about, but what do you think about this?
Hmm.
And also it could be that it's, yeah, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
Or,
There's a lot of insecurity in the topics of sex. And so again, as a marriage, what are we doing? We are looking to secure our marriages. We first do that by looking to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
This is a God
Yeah.
ordained thing for our lives. So we are here to secure it. We start by first, we love each other. Second, we need to make sure we're communicating. And then we got to understand that there's going to be a lot of things that try to keep this security from happening. The world, the enemy wants us to live in insecurity. He wants us to think, on not the same plane.
Yeah.
And that's why when it comes to how we address our battles, what kind of fighter, it goes all the way back to, like you said, how we even fight in our normal way.
Yeah.
And so it is something that I would encourage, whether you're doing date nights
Mm-hmm.
or you're doing, an anniversary, different things like that are great opportunities to do kind of a check and balance, and be willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it could be that something catches us by surprise
Mm-hmm.
that's going on in each other's
Yeah.
mind.
Well, I remember one time I had a friend tell me that she's like, "Hey, we're in the season of life that we legit have sex scheduled in our
Hmm.
calendar because we know that if we don't, it's going to be really hard." And when I told you that, you're like, "Really? That's so not sexy." And I'm like, "Hey, you know what? But at least they're getting it done,
Mm.
And it could be that the moment they made it sexy.
Yeah.
Maybe the planning wasn't sexy, but you know what? It could be that for some people that it could be, hey, they spend the day thinking about what they're going to do. Maybe they shower, maybe they do their hair, maybe you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it leads up to this excitement of something else. So whatever works for your relationship and your household, because we say it all the time, in order for you to be healthy parents and present parents and the devoted parents that you want your kids to have, it really does take you being on the same team. And part of being on the same team is you enjoying each other and
Hmm.
you being together and in that in the wholeness of marriage.
Right, and the purpose of the communication piece is that you hear so many times where you get these submit to your husbands, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not that.
Mm-hmm.
A communication piece is a two-way street,
Yeah.
and you're gonna mess up. You're gonna get some things wrong, but when you're devoted to that time and time again, one, humility, two, the reconcile. And if you can't communicate, you're not gonna be able to reconcile anything. And so I think whenever you guys, listeners, are looking at, hey, how can I incorporate this into my thought process in our marriage, or action in our marriage, like you said, it could start with a schedule.
Yeah.
For us, we do try to schedule date
Yeah.
nights, and I would say that date nights normally equate to some fun stuff. I mean, and play nights, and so that's a big deal that we try to make sure that, and not every time that we go on a date night we're
Right.
talking about that, right? It's
Yeah.
just but it does come up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's just like whenever we go on dates, we really try to refrain from talking about the stuff that we talk about every day,
Hmm.
which for us ends up being kids because they're with me all day. And it ends up being about work
Hmm.
because we're both talking about our jobs.
Hmm.
That is so day in and day out, Monday through Friday is what we talk about. So whenever we go on date nights, we are like, hey, we really need to talk about something else.
Yeah.
We try to plan trips. We try to talk about sex. We try to hit on these things, projects, house projects, all these things that are outside of our norm.
Hmm.
And I'll even say one of a lady that had been married for like 60, 50 years. She was saying one time, whenever you started saying the joke, I thought this was the one that you're going to talk about, that story. She said, yeah, my husband told me that whenever we first got married, that every weekday that starts with the letter T, or every day that starts with the letter T, is a day to have sex. So in her mind, she's thinking, okay, good, I can do this. Tuesday, Thursday. All right, I got this down. And she's like, and then the husband goes, okay, so this is how the days go. It goes Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and that's what the husband said. He's like, every day is sex day, And she's
Uh-huh.
like, oh my gosh. But again, having fun with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be super serious. It doesn't, that's not how we do things anyways. And so just taking a light heart with a topic that may be and maybe it's not uncomfortable for you, okay? But for us, it was until we got used to talking about it.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and you hear a lot of things, you can hear where because, there's been hurts or there's maybe some valid reasons, to think the way in which people can think,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to sex. And I would just make sure that again, we have to start with the communication. Where are we? Where do we
Mm-hmm.
want to go?
Mm-hmm.
How do we get there?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are we prepared to bring to the table? What are we prepared to, think about,
Mm-hmm.
understand, plan,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be? Communication about sex needs to be
Mm-hmm.
something that is incorporated into our marriage.
And if you have something that you want us to also discuss, I want to welcome you to head over to drkellycagle.com, our website, or you can also do this on Instagram or our YouTube, both at Dr. Kelly Cagle. And it doesn't have to be about sex, it doesn't have to be about communication. Anything that you are struggling in your marriage to fight through, and you would like to hear kind of how our take on it, then you can submit those requests at any of the platforms that we just said. We would love to hit on that stuff as well as we continue. As Josh said earlier, we're going to keep talking about sex because that is something that taps into a whole lot of different areas of life. This is just in the communication piece. Talk about it. Make sure that you don't shy away, that you welcome, that you lean in, that in your mind, if you are the withdrawer like me, that you just say, okay, this is my tendency, but I'm going to go here because this is important. Because I know when you bring it up, it's you did some thinking yourself
Right.
because you
Yeah.
decided the time. You said, okay, it's been a while since we talked about this. I need to refresh your mind that it's constant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been 30 minutes.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
Hey, let's go, fellas. Get ready.
Yeah, well, good luck. Good luck, women over here. They're going to turn this off. They're going to not share this episode. They're going to this is
Oh,
not an
okay.
episode that I
Okay.
sent to my husband. He does not need any more reminders that there are guys on my team. But for real, we would love for you to share this episode with your spouse if you with your husband if you want, women, if you're brave enough. Make sure that you are talking about these things because you both are on the same team. Even if you're not
Yeah.
on the same team, on sex, if you've been wounded, if there's hurt behind all of this, you are still on the same team. Maybe you're not on the same page, but you're on the same team. You are two different people with different needs, but you have to come together. So it could be that this doesn't solve it for you because our heart is just to kind of tap into something and challenge you with the topic. But if you need to do further work, then seek the help so you can be on the same team in the topic of sex and how you communicate about sex and find health in this. So choose your battles wisely in your sex life, communicate about it, think about what kind of fighter you are, lean into those hard conversations, and most importantly, respect one another so you can be loving and enjoy the fullness of your sex life too.